right, everybody. Welcome to tonight's episode of Walking with Ancestors. Tonight, we have a very prolific author and one of my friends. His name is Bryan Wilton. And Bryan, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity, man. I really do.
That's cool, man. As for some of you that haven't seen the show yet or whatever, I would like to mention that part of what I'm doing here is bringing some of the people who I refer to as subject matter experts on various different things into sort of into the fold and sharing with you who my resources is. Bryan certainly is one of mine. As a matter of fact, I got one of your books right here. It's got some wear on it. Carry it around with me.
Yeah, that's a good. I like that. That was fun, right? That's a pretty daughter. That's my daughter on the cover. My oldest.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Very cool. That's cool. Yeah, I figured you probably. I mean, you know, when we're in house doing our own thing, we kind of got to get the resources that we can. So finding local models is really important for our artwork, and that was a good choice. So that's cool. Bryan, let's jump right into it, man. You want to tell me just a little bit about yourself first, just who you are right now and that sort of thing?
And it's just so hard to define, isn't it?
Well,
I'm a father and a grandfather. I'm an infantry veteran. I've been a small business owner. I've worked in construction. I've written something near 40 books. I'm a Gothi for the Austrian Folk Assembly and a folk builder for them. That's largely in name only, but
I understand.
But yeah, I do. I've been doing this, walking this path for a minute, and I just I find that some of the greatest ability to express what I'm thinking and feeling occurs when I can sit down and employ the written word.
Sure. Well, let's talk about Asatru a minute. What is it? A lot of folks who are tuning in tonight, they don't have any idea about really any of this kind of stuff that we call heathenry and that we're involved with. To them, heathenry is basically anybody that's outside of the church.
Right.
And we have sort of our own little labels and all that kind of bullshit for all this. But Asatru has always been something that you have been absolutely involved in and dedicated to. Tell me a little bit about what it is.
Asatru is the native pre-Christian belief of our European ancestors. So for 10, 15, 20,000 years, whatever the population of Europe, there was a belief in a set of gods, powers, identities, divine realities, however you may wish to perceive that preceded the last 2,000 years. So you've got this huge timeline, and then over here you've got Christianity. Well, for all of this timeline, there was a thought system, thought process, a spirituality, and a faith, dare I say, that provided purpose, guidance, and direction for all of these folk that lived in this continent, in this very verdant, full of life environment. And those gods, be they Odin and Thor and Frigga and Freya, Balder, they all have these very powerful actions that they perform that show individuals succeeding, overcoming, barreling through, dealing with the obstacles, the various obstacles that we all deal with in life, and navigating them in such a manner that when they come out the other side, they're something much more. They're something worthy of what we perceive them as. When I look at it in those terms, I find that pre-Christian ideology offers me a very sound and comfortable place to express my spirituality, to want to interact with the divine. So that's also true, literally means being true to the Aesir.
Right on.
And it's a good stuff.
That's awesome and very powerful. There are some, for those of us that sort of delve into this kind of stuff, we recognize that there's some differences in our expression of that association with the divine and stuff like that. For example, I don't really like in my personal work and that sort of thing. I wouldn't be able to necessarily define myself as Asatru, but Norse paganism is it's a little bit broader scope. But I have to say that everything that I've seen coming out of Asatru has been really, really positive stuff, even though there are minor differences in the way that we express this kind of stuff. And some people get hung up on that stuff. I don't particularly care. I mean, I think we all are in a process of discerning what our own path is going to be regarding all this stuff. And I think from what I've seen, Asatru is probably the most powerful community practice for sure. And I think you've also done a lot of work to bring that into a more individual growth process as well. You got anything to say about that?
There, in saying that, there's a process to that. I think there's the Norse paganism ideology, the Asatru, the school of thought with Asatru,
Yeah.
these people that are dipping their toes into this sea, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's a process that I think James Russell outlines the most when he talks about the Germanization of Christianity. And I think it's very relevant with the question that you asked. When for 100 years and 2,000 years now, the church has provided these essentials of security, cared for widows, orphans, the old, the unemployed, and the disabled. They provide a burial fund for the poor, nursing service in time of plague, but even more important, he said that these material benefits were the sense of belonging to a Christian community.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I really throw my way to my thoughts behind Asatru, what we're really trying to do is rebuild that community.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it, there are hundreds of thousands of individuals who have decided that way over there is not going to cut it.
Right.
But I don't see any other viable option. Well, there are choices. So
Yeah.
I think when we talk about the work that both you and I are doing, we're trying to help reestablish, create, or solidify these ideas of community that people desire. I think with the advent of social media, we come across a unique problem that our ancestors never had to deal with.
Yeah,
and that is, you can get somebody on there, and you may not know the mental stability of this individual. He's going to start talking about, well, if you run a bath and throw some bay leaves in it and burn a candle, you can give me a little cricket. Come on, man, give me a break.
I know, right? I know. And huge gap in this sort of in the consciousness development of that. And you know that's a lot of the point of the work that I do is trying to help people how to understand their consciousness and therefore build consciousness tools to be able to do this kind of thing without having to, rely on somebody's sort of bathtub recipe to make this happen. And it does require community. We have to have sort of consensus on this stuff. And I think that's one of the things that I've seen is so powerful and important about the folks that are doing the work within Asatru and where we really come together on that kind of stuff. And I'm always going to be a barger, man. I'm always like a little bit on the outskirts of things and shit like that. That's been a theme in my life personally, but people need more than that though. It's okay to rely on the folks in the Utengard for, going out and searching out wisdom and finding cool shit that you need to bring back to the community. But you got to have a community to bring it back to,
That's been one of the key points that I think Justin's really drove home. You got to have a tribe. And the same thing with some of the other individuals really promoting these ideas. You got to have people around you that are going to call you on the carpet and say, look, that's not what you said you were going to do. You're going to have to do better than that. And I think when you look at those tales, if you will envision in your mind all of the poetic and the prosaic, these texts from which we pull all of this knowledge that we consider to be holy out of, if you were to sit there and envision a group of individuals with an elder from a community sitting around offering these tales to the younger members of the tribe to help them grow and to be something, we're kind of doing that as adults all of a sudden. We're trying to really develop some of these things. And I think people that have been through the ringer emotionally, mentally with many of the societal things, spiritually through some of the failures of the church, there's a real fear there with regards to what will I become if I buy into this and it fails again.
Yeah, no shit.
And we got to overcome that.
Yeah, definitely. And we're not going to be able to do that with half-ass answers and non-well-researched understandings, really, and there's a point where the research kind of stops, of course, and you have to figure out some of these things from within your blood and within your ancestry and that sort of thing. And I like how things are coming together in our community regarding this stuff. And what are your thoughts?
I saw a deal not long ago that there were more pagans in America than there were Presbyterians. Yeah, in Wales, it was the number 2 religion outside of the church. I mean, number 2. I mean, the Church of England obviously is number 1.
Right.
But there was Julius Evola wrote a book on the mystery of the Grail.
Yeah.
The Grail is this interesting period because there's the Lady of the Lake, which is obviously a leftover remnant of the people that migrated to England from around Pomerania and Rügen, and Tacitus describes them as the people that carried the cart to the village during the springtime festivals and sacrificed the slaves to the Lady of the Lake.
Right.
She was carried forward into Arthurian legend to provide this very powerful phallic symbol of masculinity to a king who was very much in a time of transition to Christianity.
Yep.
I say all that to say this is that, Evola talks about it in a serious way. We try to be academic and scientific about that, but there's so much of what we're trying to do that simply cannot be rectified by scientific means. It's all that material with having historical and scientific value are the ones that matter the least. Conversely, all the mythical, legendary, and epic elements denied historical truth and demonstrative value.
Yep.
Acquire here superior validity and become the source for a more real and certain knowledge.
Yes.
When we start looking at that, there's a certain leaning toward the limbic resonance that people might cultivate within a tribe of close individuals. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Absolutely.
I think that, and I wrote about that in the book that you showed, the A Drink from Humor as well, that understanding of individuals, like a father understands what his daughter's thinking.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of difficulty in a marriage when the husband can't anticipate that thought process from his wife the way her father could.
Right. One of the ways that I approach that whole construct of reality, if you will, is to put a lot of attention on my students and the folks that reach out to me, put a lot of attention on animism and ancestor veneration, and develop that. And in developing that, consciousness develops in a natural way. And I think that might be one of the keys of bringing us back to something a lot more solid and a lot less dependent on historians and archaeologists.
When you talk about animism, I suppose you were talking about the definition that we offer a soul to natural phenomena or the inanimate objects in our area, like a tree or like, sure. Right. If you look at the rune poems that, well, not the rune poems, but when Sigurd meets Brunhild, right, she offers him a memory drop, right?
Yes.
It's this drink of inspiration. And one of the things that she tells him is about the birth runes. Birth runes is this unique setup where you write these birthing runes, and I suppose Berkano would be one of them, but you write these images that focus the thought process upon an idea. Mm-hmm. Write them on the back of your hands, you write them on your elbows and your joints. So here's a midwife who is covered in runes on her hands and her arms, using the muscles to pull and tug this life from one realm of existence to another realm of existence.
Yep.
In that scenario, you are incorporating the physical, the spiritual, the mental, the emotional, all of these energies, and this person becomes very much a part of the environment in which they live.
Yes, that's why we're born into it, you know?
Right. And so I think when we talk about these animism and animistic kind of ideas, Joseph Campbell pointed out in the late 60s that whenever a culture settled into an area, they did their best to integrate themselves into the environment in which they lived.
Yes. Yes.
Here we're looking at our lore and we're seeing that from the beginning, this was part of the process. When that child came into this world, there was, you passed the norms at that point. You've done the protections. So I think, I mean, honestly, look at it. If you look across the earth, the world is littered with civilizations that have fucking failed.
Yep.
I mean, you have Aztecs and Egyptians and ancient Chinese and all these wonderful ruins that we're looking at with awe and fascination. And it's an example of one thing. Every time people have settled down to do that, they have separated themselves en masse from the environment in which they live. And once it changed a small amount, they were stuck there and they died out.
They have embraced, they embraced a world denying reality rather than a world accepting view. And
That's true.
part of, I think, I think this whole the whole reconstruction of our ancient ways has a lot to do with sort of a correction of the tiller, if you will. Maybe hopefully something inside the consciousness of all of us is saying, hey, wait a minute, guys, we've been down this road before. We need to probably veer off a little bit and try to accept this world that we live in as opposed to denying it, like the JIC does, like living your whole life and I see this with heathens, but living your whole life for the promise of an afterlife,
Yeah, it's a life affirming faith as opposed to a life denying faith. I agree with you 100% there. I had a lady that I talked to. Her name is Anna. She's also an up and coming Githya in the AFA. We were talking about the recent school shootings and all these other things, that all of these ideas and things that are pulling us off our course, focusing our attention over here and focusing our attention over there. Mm-hmm. So much of what we've done to keep people focused is to encourage them to find that problem that we can raise the most cane about. She said to me, and I'll never forget it, and I hope that she uses it and promotes it and builds a fine name for herself. Anna said to me, everybody keeps pointing out the iceberg, but nobody's changing the course of the Titanic.
Right.
And I'm like, holy fuck. So I'm like, you bastard, man, I wanted that idea.
Right. Well, dude, we're going to take this up.
Anna came up with that, so I give her full credit for that.
She nailed it, man. I think you've got a hell of a, I think you're promoting a hell of a good mind there to be a Githya. I think that's
She is a good mind. She is a good mind. She's going to go a long way, I think.
Yeah, I look forward to a lot of what's going on with the Gothi and Githya programs.
Anime Funk, she's up in Minnesota.
Sweet. That's not far from where I'm in central Wisconsin right now. So, all right, we're going to take a break for just a second.
Okay.
And we will come right back to it. Thank you, everybody. All right, welcome back, folks, and we got a new star of the show on here with us. Would you mind introducing her, Bryan?
This is my little girl. This is Scarlett. Say hi, Scarlett.
Hi.
How you doing, Scarlett? Good to see you, honey. Now, I've met your dad, but I don't think you and I have met yet. Or did we?
Maybe so. Maybe at Melissa's, I think.
Yeah, that's right. That's cool. So, man, we were just talking about what is later, honey. We were just talking about what is what is Asatru, and that led us into a whole lot of discussion. And where we were with it kind of fits into what I wanted to ask you next, which was how does it fit into the Northern European spiritual reconstruction of today? I mean, what's the role of Asatru as opposed to some of the other things that are going on? And we'll try to stick with the positive things that are going on, because there's a whole lot of bullshit that's going on too. And I guess it's to be expected. But how yeah, go ahead.
I think it's an integral part of it. I think that,
definitely.
So let's say Shaka Zulu, as a Zulu king, grew up in an environment that was uniquely suited to everything that he was fully incorporated in that environment. Mm-hmm. Great, mighty pythons carved into the walls of the caves of the Congo, elephants, all of these wonderful aspects that were familiar to him, where he could perceive a divine nature thing. The same thing with an islander in Hawaii, with the goddess Pele of the volcano.
Yes.
Shaka Zulu's not going to understand or perceive a spiritual experience in, say, Skadi.
Right.
And Genghis Khan may not necessarily perceive something, he'll see something amazing and dramatic, but he may not understand the veneration that the islanders gave Pele. So,
yep.
There was a recent study, I posted it the other day, that about 70,000 years ago, some generation was comfortable enough that children began to be able to develop abstract thought processes. And so it happened in several different locations all around the world. So if these children began to develop abstract thought processes, such as something as simple as go to the rock, turn left, go to the tree, turn right.
Uh-huh.
If you can't visualize that, that is meaningless.
Yes, definitely.
So now we're talking about this development of language. So it's developing over here, it's developing over here, it's developing over here.
And really, it's also a development of context.
It is, that's exactly right. And so as this ability to express abstract thoughts and ideas comes to fruition, concepts of the divine also begin to carry labels. And those labels are going to be uniquely suited to the environment in which those people have developed their cultures.
Right. So this links us back to animism again, really.
Exactly right. So they kind of go hand in hand. They kind of go, it's a little dash of this and it's a little dash of that. And it's all of it is
a little bit of blood, a little bit of soil.
That's exactly right, man. These gods and goddesses are uniquely suited to the ancestral ideas that our ancestors used to build kingdoms, to survive, to exist, to raise children. These fairy tales that we tell our children, these stories that are passed down from grandmother to grandmother to mother and father.
Yeah,
they carry an understanding that is going to be suited to us, that it's going to be palatable to the appetites of our spirit. Whereas if someone starts talking to me about something some Amazonian Indian considers to be holy, yes, I'm going to respect that. Yes, I may find wisdom in it. Yeah. But I don't know what a spider monkey's going to do at night. Shit.
Yeah, I've got firsthand experience with those spider monkeys, so my attitude about it's probably not all that good.
You can't be shooting them with the cleaning rods. It's jungle workers.
You know, only people in our generation are gonna of army.
I know, right?
Yeah, no, you can't be shooting them with the fucking cleaning rods and blanks. That's no good. No, absolutely not. But you know, your point there is really important, and I think there's some fields of study that are contemporary fields of study that are really illustrating some of these concepts that we're talking about, like epigenetics, for example. Hell, even quantum mechanics and quantum physics is starting to touch on some of these things with regard to the awareness of consciousness and the development of the understanding of it even from a mathematical perspective. We're coming back to the same kind of concepts, and you know, shaman have been carrying out these kind of concepts for thousands and thousands of years. They subsequently developed in what we label as many other things, which are maybe just you know, like people would refer to within the magic communities and stuff like that. These are specializations of some of these really ancient, deep connected aspects of our constructs of reality. And just because they're, you know, the people who are practicing these things that are specializations of it, that don't have the connection to this, what you and I are just talking about, they're really missing out, man. And a lot of those kind of folks are showing up and exploring what we're talking about here. And they're finding that connection to ancestors is absolutely critical to their development.
There's a primary fear involved in it that I don't think we've sufficiently failed to address as a whole. And the antithesis of it comes from the Christian church. We're all one, we're all the same, we're all equal.
Right.
The great fear is that if I hold myself separate to a different standard, will I be better than?
Right.
And that is what most people will hear. Well, I follow this. I've got this kind of folkish idea that of my people, and so you think you're better than? and that's what they hear. They never hear. And I've always been the kind of guy that said, look, we're going to find ours, they're going to find theirs, and they're going to find theirs. And once they do that, that's when we stand together as equals on firm ground and move forward into the stars. I don't think we're going to do it 1 second sooner.
No, I don't think so either.
We probably will, with great sacrifice of life and money and expenditure and everything else, but
yeah,
who's going to be left behind?
Right.
I mean, honestly, it's going to be the wealthy with the high IQ that are going to move on and up and out and
right. And given the current state of things, that's really the only deciding factor. And I think there's a lot more to humanity than just that factor. You know, the 1% are the only ones that are going to be, or even less than that, if we're really being honest. Have we submitted all of our power up to them? And are we going to continue to do that? You know, are we going to continue to not embrace our power that we have in our blood, and promote other people to do the same thing? You know,
that would probably be the best benefit of True among European peoples would be, first off, to reinvigorate Native American cultures, reinvigorate Central American cultures.
Yep.
I don't think it's any accident what they're discovering in the Amazon.
No.
The hinges they're discovering in the Amazon mirror exactly the hinges that they find in Great Britain. The
Yep.
DNA evidence that they find in the Amazon most closely resembles the DNA of the Aborigines of Australia. There's a common thread of wisdom that runs throughout these, but once these people begin to grab, like Luis Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements based on the Mayan shamanism.
Yep.
Once those people begin to embrace that roots and begin to stop, you know, it's a really big world-changing thought. It's a world-changing thought, but you see the successful indulgence of that in Japan.
Yeah.
There's a culture that celebrates itself. Look at the success they enjoy.
You know, Shinto was one of the experiencing a little bit of Shinto when I was a boy, from a Japanese man that I met. We lived in a sort of a Japanese enclave. A Japanese company came in and they sort of rented out houses for all their Japanese workers that were going to be there doing this particular job or whatever. We happened to live there, and so I got some influence from this. And I met a man who was practicing Shinto, and he was playing a flute and doing all kinds of stuff. And so I asked him, I'm a 10-year-old, and I'm asking him questions about this. And he said, basically what he told me, I'm going to paraphrase, but this is the way of our people. You need to find the way of your people. And he said to me, basically what he said is, I don't think you're practicing it. I don't think your culture is really honest with itself, and you should go find that. And that's part of what set me on this path to begin with, man.
And he's right. Our culture doesn't want to. There's a segment of our culture that doesn't want to accept this because it's a terrifying thought. Everyone wants to associate so much of what has happened with the destruction of other cultures with white men. But I would submit to you that we were simply the tools, and that it was monotheism that went on this great rampage to build the coffers of the church.
Yep.
And now we see that failing. Now we see all of generations of people dealing with the scars of waiting on something out there to fix what's in here, to heal this, to do that. And I'm sure that there are certain miracles, but I suspect that those miracles come more from the power of positive thought than they do with something divine.
Yep.
So there's a real fine dissection that we've got to undertake there to separate ourselves from this monotheistic thought process that's still awfully powerful in the world.
And it's so pervasive, and you don't even have to be involved with the monotheism at all. You can be sort of an agnostic or even an atheist, but this has been built into our sort of empire. It's built into the psychology of our culture in such a way that it makes it so pervasive that you don't even recognize you're engaging in these kinds of dogmas and indoctrinations. But you are. I mean, I do. I've been working on this shit directly for a long fucking time, man. And I still find that I'm like, wow, that is a huge dogmatic expression that is not serving me or my people at all. I need to start paying attention to that. You know? Yeah.
These scars, and I think that universalist approaches to indigenous faiths happen to be one of those scars.
I agree.
I really do. I think that, but again, we fall back on that old fear of if they do that, are they going to think they're better than we are?
Right.
Right. There's always going to be somebody that does, but by and large, for the most part, I had a buddy that fought in Vietnam. He said, him and his buddy were sitting there getting high on Thai Buddha stick, and they figured out, these people just want to be left alone to farm their rice. They could give a shit who's running this country.
That's exactly right. And that's really what it all boils down to. But figuring out a way not to make yourself public enemy number one while accomplishing that goal is sort of that takes a little doing, man. It takes a little weaving, I think.
It does take a little weaving, and it's a pattern that has worked for politicians for a long time. When they get elected, they're going to tell you, well, if you don't elect me, these people are going to take this, this, and this from you, and it's probably it's
all fear.
It's all fear-based manipulation.
Yep, and it works. That's why they keep doing it.
And indigenous faiths do not subscribe to that fear-based manipulation.
Exactly. That's part of why, there's not a whole, that's part of why what we do is never going to be a state-sponsored religion.
I don't know, man. If that state of Jefferson gets built, I'm going to go run for governor.
You know what? I would love to do that place. That'd be fucking cool, man.
Dude, I mean, think about it. If the Mormons can go out there and get Utah, if we can split Jefferson off and make that a pagan state and make it thrive, hell yeah, it would be this shit. We got to figure out, we've got to start demonstrating that this faith, way of life, these various spiritualities provide that kind of positive purpose, guidance, and direction.
Yep.
And that's something else I've been working on too, that has really caught my eye recently. Balder is the first son of Odin and Frigg. So Odin made this sacrifice to become something more. His son is this bright and gleaming being whose mother fully incorporated him into the world in which he lived. Everything took an oath not to harm him. He was fully incorporated into that world.
Yep.
It was the uninspired human intellect that took him out of it.
Right.
By whispering to the disenfranchised and the old.
Right.
But his house, in which there were the fewest baleful rooms, in which he gave judgment that no one could gainsay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just like in the Riggs Thula, the first son is a little bit better than the father, and then the grandchild is this true civilization building character.
Mm-hmm.
Each generation of the Riggs Thula, you see that. You see it also in Asgard. When Forseti becomes this judge who offers the most favorable judgments.
Mm-hmm.
We can promote the idea that our spirituality of faith can help build a society where free men might enjoy a favorable judgment from the society in which they live. It goes a long way to eliminating fear. How do we prove that? How do we demonstrate that that is a part of our spirituality and it is a cornerstone of our very civilization?
Dude, the Magna Carta. If you look at the Magna Carta, you can see that that's obviously an example that's in our blood,
And that comes from the Danelaw.
Exactly.
And that comes from the all thing. And so it's a part of who and what we are. Imagine what free men might accomplish if they understood that justice system worked in their favor and it wasn't something that was simply fleecing them for money for the state to build a road or some shit like that.
Well, and that was the goal of our forefathers. And I think to an extent and for a certain period of time that actually did exist. There is some conjecture as to when that actually stopped happening. But that's all, that's really not what we're here to talk about. But
that's another deep subject for sure.
Fucking yes. Yeah. And I consider myself to be largely political, but really what that means is that I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. And because I don't see any purpose in engaging in a construct of reality that is just like Christianity, which is either for me or against me and all that bullshit. But you can't help but start to engage in engaging your political mind regarding this stuff when we talk about things like a culture and a way of life and what we're building here.
Well, heck yeah, go to any African-American Baptist church and tell me what they're preaching about from behind the pulpit. They're talking about things to help build that community.
Yep.
And they're using Democrats or Republicans, wherever you might wish. And, they are, I think, a necessary evil, as much as we don't want to admit. I mean,
sure.
For a reason, they are that countering, conflicting, competing, complementing element, much like yin and yang. It's necessary that for people to do that. I think it's been usurped in a number of ways.
Sure.
But imagine, back to our point about the state of Jefferson being a pagan community.
Yeah.
Imagine if it was successful. I mean, there's
yeah, dude.
You got, every time I look in a history book, you see where the gods again become involved in the affairs of men like they are today. All of these various gods and goddesses. Shit goes south pretty quick.
It does.
Okay, so now here we are with all these gods and goddesses involved again in the affairs of men, men making decisions based on that. Where do we go now? Are are we solidifying those ideas that will allow us to build that cornerstone of justice for free men? Wow.
You know, Sadhguru said this, and this is a guy that he's a guy from India.
Mm-hmm. I know who he is.
Guy. You know who he is? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He said that if we do not make our children better than us, then we are committing a crime against humanity.
Yeah, that's a lesson of the Rick Stula as well.
Yep,
every generation is better. There's so much in that tale, and once again, at the end of it, the last generation, the mother and father have a son. He becomes king by his own hand. He has children.
Yep.
Cone learns the language of he learns the use of the runes, teaches him to his father. Cone learns the language of the birds.
Yep.
The birds tell him, "Why are you sitting here fooling with us? Go build a kingdom." And he became of the Danes, and so.
And that's why that's part of why I think that's such an important lesson right now. And when we're looking at where we're going with this, and I was going to ask you, how do you define your function within community, and what goals do you see for our community and all that kind of shit? But really, we're answering that. And, and just having the conversation is answering that. But something like what you're talking about with the state of Jefferson, or whatever they might decide to call it, if something like that kicks off, wow, the potential and the possibility for us to regain some of the ground that we've lost over the last 700 years is tremendous.
It is tremendous.
But people got to learn to value their ancestors, or they won't value their progeny.
I don't think people understand exactly what's at stake.
No, they really don't, and that's part of the thing.
I think if that state were promoted as such, if that state were promoted with these higher ideals that we're talking about right now, you'd see a lot more success with it. I mean,
yeah,
it's such, and that's one of the most beautiful parts of the United States. You have the great redwood forests all through that part of the state, and they're just amazing. I went out there last year.
Highway 1 is a really great venue through which to experience that. That was my personal one. But getting off the highway, there's a lot more, of course. But I didn't have a lot of time. I was a young soldier. But going up from Fort Ord, north on Highway 1, holy shit, dude.
I went from Brownsville. I spoke at Brownsville. Then I went over to the mouth of the Navarro River there at Mendocino, and then all the way up to Grants Pass, Oregon.
So you headed up to the Mendocino Valley then, right?
Yeah, I mean, Grants River and Smith River and all that stuff. And I think we spent 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. Wow. It was real nice. It was real nice.
All right. We're going to, as soon as you get a chance, we'll take a break here and let some. All right. We'll take a break here, and we'll be back shortly with some more of these questions. And this is a great discussion, man. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, man, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Wow, man. Cool. Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're just enjoying the shit out of this conversation, and I hope you guys are too. So I wanted to start off this part of it. We're talking about and this is kind of a personal question, but how do you engage in animism and ancestor veneration personally, or as a community effort? We talk about either or both, but what are the things that you do that are sort of up that alley?
I have a meditation is key to that for me.
Awesome.
Meditation is where I sit out there and I try to calm my mind and become aware of everything going on around me. The sound of that bird, the wind through the trees, all of those little things. And my little space out here on my back porch is petrified wood and stones and crystals and vines and life and all of these things that mean something to me.
Yeah.
So as a group, one of the best ways to do this kind of thing is we have our holy enclosures called the Vey.
Yeah.
The god, the Vey.
Yep.
So when we walk into the Vey, we kind of separate and we change our thought process. We get people to change their minds. And once you change your thought process towards something holy and sit down and do something like Sambal.
Right.
Sambal is a kind of a powerful, almost magical kind of formula where a group of individuals will stand up and raise a horn to a god, and they'll stand up and speak of an ancestor. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you that when they speak of someone that's just passed, there's a lot of raw emotion that's brought into that. So now you have this mindset, Now you've called upon God. Now you have this very powerful passion, feeling, emotion,
Yeah.
a remembrance. And then the last round is a boast or a toast. It's about me or somebody else in there. Thank you or something. So from your gods to your ancestors, this is who I am.
Right.
There's a real powerful symbology in that brings, I think, all of these kind of elements together, almost like a spiritual rebirth. And I like the midwife with the runes on her arms pulling new life into the world. We're trying to pull that spirituality back into the world by making that connection and standing up and saying, and if you stand up and don't have anything to boast about, well, maybe it's time to do some work.
Yeah, right.
What a well, it's not humiliating. It's a
sobering, maybe.
Sobering is a good term. Yeah, sobering is a good term for that, because it's sobering realization that all I've done is exist. All I've done is average thing. And then I think sometimes when we deal with animism amongst people, I see too many people live a life of expectant phenomena. They need some kind of expectant phenomena, like, oh, I saw a crow or a raven, I saw a cat, and those are neat things, but we cannot use those as a justification for us to follow this way of life. We follow this way of life because there's a faith here that gives us, a warm fuzzy, for lack of a better term, that positive purpose and guidance.
Yeah.
And once we tune our minds to become aware of these things happening around us, it is a sobering experience. It is a pleasant, comfortable thing that gives me a platform from which I might jump onto greater things. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people have.
And I think particularly when you get a community behind it, when you've got, and not, it doesn't have to be big. It's just people that you trust and that you love that are around you, your family or a couple of families. We call that a kindred in our path, right?
Yes, kindred.
So having that community around you when you're doing this, everybody engaging in that's some of the kinds of things that have kept people going to church, for example. And we need to be able to provide that to our community so that urge to get back to something that's similar to that we're not doing doesn't exist,
I have a group of people here that are fighters. They call themselves the Warlord Society, Team Dark Horse, and they fight professionally and amateur. They're just awesome dudes.
Sounds cool.
But they got, one of the guys has like 7 acres, and we go out there and they'll have a fire and they'll have a cookout and they'll camp, and when they get together, all of these men that have spent time in the ring, that have spent time on the mats all week long, beating each other up, literally blood and sweat and tears and everything else. Yep. When they get together and they sit around and they talk to each other and they enjoy each other's company, you know what they begin to understand? I'm on the right path because I feel good about this association. When people have gone to church for so long, they've gone in there and they've felt good about the association they have with those people.
That's right.
And we get distracted. Sometimes people want to throw a backyard kegger, and this is what it's all about. Well, there's more to it than that. I mean, sit around drunk all the time.
Right.
But
we both experience that.
Yeah, by and large, what we've got to do is create an environment where people, when they come in, they're like, you know what, I made a good decision to do this. And I think sometimes we fail in that regard. There's brutal honesty about it.
I think that's one of the most important things of the important aspects of something that you're heavily engaged in, which is the Gothi program that you're working with. We have to have somebody who's confident, who can gather the folks around and get that started and do it. That's really important shit. What can you tell me about that and some of the other projects that you're working on?
As far as being a Gothi, I'm a Gothi mentor. I'm mentoring the first AFA Gothi in Sweden. I'm mentoring the first AFA Gothi in South Africa. And they both present unique challenges. But I mean, it is a unique challenge when someone does lose a husband, that you can sit down and use this spirituality to provide them comfort.
As non-commissioned officers in the Army, we had some small scratch of that experience, you know, well, hopefully not, but I mean, we had to help address our soldiers when they were experiencing loss, not even necessarily in a combat circumstance, but just like daily life and shit, you know.
Yeah, and to find out all of a sudden that the ability to do that resides in our Lord, that's an amazing thing to me. And it's an amazing thing to a lot of people, because there's a lot of soldiers still dealing with that loss. All of a sudden, that guy's not there.
Yeah.
And he's been a pain in your fucking ass for 6 months. But I digress. But you know, we do have these changes in life that these stages of life, these transitions of life that we have to help people navigate, from becoming a boy to a young adventurer, from becoming a young adventurer to a man, from becoming that man, soldier, warrior to becoming a husband. There's radical changes in thought processes and beliefs that allow us to dedicate ourselves to this path. And we don't just get there, because after you become that lover, then you become the king in your own home. And then at some point you become the wise old sage and prepare yourself to take that long walk with the gods, or to enter that door, whatever that might look like. And the same thing for a woman. A woman's is a little bit different though, because at a certain age, she's a woman, whether she fucking likes it or not.
Right. Yep. That's
you can have a child. Now, there's a lot of preparation that goes into that we sacrificed for the sake of comfort and convenience. We send them to school, let the school educate them. Oh, but don't teach them about that, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But that's something else we're trying to proclaim. As a Gothi, I help provide that kind of guidance to individuals to deal with these transitions in life. Mm-hmm. It's not always easy, but the requisite study to help make that happen is a broad area of study.
It is, and that's part of the reason that I don't refer to myself as a Gothi, even though I've studied a lot of these things. I'm interested in a lot of these things, and you know, people can hang whatever label they want to on themselves, and whether they're good at it or not, of course, is a totally different issue. But to have some folks sit down and look at the lore, and look at our culture, and look at all the things that we need in a modern context, and develop something to produce a Gothi that actually has the capability to do these things. That is an invaluable part of our developing culture, man. And I just want to say thank you for what you're doing regarding that.
Thank you, man. I know we put a lot of effort into that. EFAs. There have been a lot of people trying to get in that program that can't do it, but there was something I was going to read to you about from the ancient Teutonic priesthood, about what the Gothi really was.
Yeah, please.
They are from Strabo and Diodorus. According to Strabo, there are 3 classes of persons who are especially honored by the Gauls, Germanic, Northern European tribes: the Bards, the Vates, and the Druids. The Bards are minstrels and poets. The Vates are sacrificers and interpreters of natural phenomena, while the Druids practice both and moral philosophy. Okay, they are considered to be the most just, and for this reason they are entrusted with the decision of all cases, both private and public. Formerly they even settled wars and parted those who were on the point of fighting. Above all, they were entrusted with the settlement of suits for manslaughter. So in those days, the Gothi and the chieftain were 2 separate roles.
Right.
But if you look at that and think about what we discussed with regards to Balder and Forseti,
yep,
you find this cornerstone as opposed to the martial aspects that you and I have both been so involved in.
Yep.
There's the Gothi, who handles these responsibilities and the celebrations and all of the roles of the Bard, the Vate, and the Druid. And then the chieftain, who handles the general and defense of the community. It wasn't until much later that they became one and the same, when it suited the purposes of the church, most of all.
Right, I was going to say that, yeah.
Right, but when they were separate, they were very distinct roles. And when you read Pennick's A History of Pagan Europe, he goes into great detail about what these roles were, especially with the Slavs.
Yeah,
they didn't fight, but they could provide this solid judgment that people wouldn't question. What a high-minded idea that Forseti represents. Who knew that all of a sudden this god might be something, and that the Bard with Bragi, with the runes carved on his tongues, he's weaving this canvas in our minds with written word and language.
Yep.
When you look at all of that and you begin to think of what the role of the goatee truly is in the society, all of a sudden it becomes some people might consider it an onerous burden, and some people might see it as a wonderful way to express what our spirituality might be able to do for a world that is very much in pain.
Man,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, when a man's going through the process of becoming that sage, just by the natural way of life, just by age and by experience and all those kind of things, it's got to be. How can you look at your people and not want to embrace some kind of a responsibility there for sharing this wisdom that you've gained over the years, sharing what you've learned, sharing some of your experiences, probably most, your mistakes and all those things. And why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you be interested in doing that and really sort of be committed to it? That blows my mind. And there's so many that aren't.
Fear. I'll tell you, even from my own personal experience, it's been fear.
Yeah.
Let's say I go ahead and fully embrace everything I can become.
Yep.
I started a podcast in 2012 or 13. I had 100,000 unique listeners a month on it. Went all around the world.
Yeah.
I've done it a couple of times. What would happen if I really stepped out there and became that individual that could provide that guidance? What would become of me? Could I handle that responsibility? Could I shoulder that burden? Or why would anyone want to fucking listen to me?
Yeah, I struggle with that myself.
So there really is this sense of, and look at me cross my arms because I'm kind of exposing the truth here.
Yeah, see,
there's
I noticed that kind of shit.
You're right. So there really is a fear there.
Yeah,
because there are a lot of people. All of a sudden, we decided to take this alternative path in life. Yep. We become the case study for everyone near to us that is not on this path as to whether or not this is worth a shit or not.
Right.
And that's
profound.
Yeah, if you jump out there as this example of, and people lead with the chin, well, because it's the decline of Western civilization and blah, 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 and you believe, shut up. You know what I mean?
I knew I could get you talking about the turkey goblin next.
God. And they are committed to making sure that you fail, because if I succeed,
right,
if I become successful at this, if I surpass expectations, which by some regards I've done, in some regards I have not.
Sure.
What does that individual become? Because you mentioned it with experience and growing, but you know what else comes with experience? The pain of sacrifice. There's something we have to get rid of to step into that arena. And the most visual form of example of that is the sweat of a fighter, the sweat of an infantryman. He's got to sweat in training so he doesn't bleed in fucking war. And it's the same thing on this spiritual battlefield. We have to sacrifice those ideas of, well, I'm going to be more right than you, and I'm going to write this book report on Simic or Rudolph or H.R. Ellis Davidson, and I'm going to be more right. And well, you're not even on the same fucking playing field as me.
Nope.
What, are you shitting me? I get fired up about that kind of stuff. But when you try to step out there and do that, there's other individuals that are convinced, well, I'm comfortable in this justification that this pagan path has provided me to delve into these excesses of behavior, and I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to be challenging that. Somebody needs to be pushing that envelope and saying, no, you're a case study for everyone around you. I expect you to do better.
And a beautiful thing about what is going on right now is that more people are standing up. People are trying to embrace a little, they're sticking their toes in the water a little bit at first, because that's a lot of fear to overcome, you know what I'm saying? But I'm seeing it happen. And I don't think it's happening by accident.
It's not happening by accident. First time I met Steve McDowell was at the Huebner Runestone State Park. He came down and I asked him, I said, how did all this start?
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, well, I started this in about 68 in San Francisco with some other people. And then you had Elsa doing her thing. You had some other people in Australia. You had a couple of other people in Europe, the guy Bjorn in Iceland.
Yep.
They didn't have the internet. They weren't making long distance phone calls to each other.
Nope.
This shit was showing up. There was an urge, an impetus, an awakening, if you will, that was occurring around the world with these European peoples that was saying, hey, it's time to stand up because this nonsense ain't getting us anywhere.
Right, it isn't.
I don't know what all it is, but those people stood up and took those slings and arrows.
Yeah.
Those people stood up against individuals that would say, well, I saw a guy in a debate not long ago, and he got the floor marked with himself. Well, what's to say, we just don't start something up and make it up and go from there. And he didn't have an answer for it. And all I could think of was, it's not made up.
Right.
We've already proven it can work, that it can build civilizations and kingdoms and empires and provide a healthy avenue for people to live.
Yes. It's done. That's part of it. It's not like we're reinventing the wheel. We're just rediscovering it, really.
Dusting it off and greasing it up, and let's go forward.
Yeah.
It is a big responsibility. If you look at the Renaissance, it can be traced back about 13 people or so that changed it.
Yep.
What happens if there's 13 of us that really find a stroke of brilliance or inspiration and say, it's time to change the world?
And that's an important fucking thing to address too, is that when we're talking about the Renaissance, for example, how that happened, how that, these few driving influences popped up and sort of began to turn that wheel and break that inertia. And we are in the process of breaking that inertia right now, Naturally, the egoic part of me would like to think that I have something to do with that, but that's really easy for me to dismiss because I work on it a lot. But however, it's happening, and to ignore the inertia and not want to sort of perpetuate that and keep pushing that boulder until it falls down this hill, man, we'd be idiots not to. We'd be absolute idiots not to, because the potential for this is so empowering for everybody on this planet, The
interesting thing about it is that science played a part in that Renaissance.
Yep.
Art played a role in it.
Yep.
So we have the understanding of the natural world we live in. You have depictions of beauty.
Mm-hmm.
You have music. You have song that inspire the soul.
Yep.
And you have a spirituality that kind of petered out there.
Mm-hmm.
But all of that stuff inspired people. And then what happened is there were great sacrifices.
Yes.
Millions of people died, witches were burned, all kinds of nonsense. We came out of that. There had to be sacrifices made. Are we willing to make those sacrifices? Are we willing to let go of some of those things? Are we willing to do that dramatic thing necessary to help us move forward?
When I look at...
Will nature do it for us, such as the Black Death?
When I look at your little girl and the rest of our kids and the rest of these new generations that are coming up, I can pretty clearly look at that, look at my ancestors, look at the spirits of the land around me, and what all is at stake. And it's a real easy answer for me. But I had to put all that shit in context first, man.
And I think that's one of the things we need to do, is be able to put it into context for people. There's a certain spirit that a man needs to develop as a warrior to become the king of his own home, to become that lover, to be willing to put his back against the wall and be willing to move forward against all comers, to protect that which he loves and is willing to defend at all costs.
Yep.
It's hard for a neckbeard writing a book report to do that.
Yeah.
He ain't gonna do nothing but run to the refrigerator.
That's right. And I think that that's part of why we see a lot of veterans in this community.
It's also a scary thought too. It hurts to knuckle up with somebody. I mean, everybody that's been in a fist fight knows you're going to get punched in the face, you're going to bleed, and the next day your shoulders are going to be sore, your fists are going to be sore, and you're going to be like, why am I sore there? Oh, you hit me with a pool stick.
That's right.
And there's going to be something like that. And people don't want to engage in that kind of violence, but
no, they have. It is sort of a, who was that? I think it was Jack Donovan that was the last guy that I heard say this, but violence is the gold standard,
It is the gold standard. I mean, no change really occurs. There's always an unless or either or an or. You know, this is the way it's going to happen. Or, you know, there's going to be some violence brought to bear.
And worse than the violence is the fear of violence, and that's what's got all these neckbeards and everybody else paralyzed. And
you also have thousands of people in the street on the West Coast, on the East Coast sometimes, just pouring forth these chaotic energy and hate, and anger, and fighting in the streets and righteous indignation. What's feeding on that?
Right.
Where's all that energy going? I mean, that's literally our opponent when you get right down to it. That's what we're tussling with.
Yes, it is.
The educated academic who doesn't want to sacrifice some part of himself to become something more, I can easily deal with that.
Sure.
What I can't deal with is a mob.
Right.
I can't deal with that mass of chaos coming at me. Anna said, I was talking to her about that same thing today. She said, how do we weave that into something fantastic?
Transmutation, right? I know exactly what she's talking about.
That's very much a feminine kind of thing. I'm sitting here thinking about taking it head on. I mean, that's the only way I can relate to it.
Right.
She's sitting there saying, no. I'm going to weave something beautiful.
We're going to receive that energy and accept it and do something smart with it.
Yeah. And
that's brilliant.
There are some very brilliant minds in Ossetru that I count as friends, we all know these things and we're all trying to steer the Titanic. I see some women doing it with weaving. I see some women doing it with beautiful works of art. That's another thing too. I've been wondering for some time, where are our works of art? Where is the grand work of art that will inspire people to think of their gods? The first thought that comes to their mind, it would be Odin or Frigga or Balder. Where is that work of art? Where is that song that brings peace or love or happiness in those terms?
Even more so, what's our medium for that? You know, what's going to be our contemporary medium for the expression of these things? You know,
that's one of the reasons the AFA is so heavily building the Hofs. We're fixing to build another one. And I can't steal Matt's thunder, but we've got lines for several. And once we have these locations, that changes the dynamics of everything.
I agree. I think that's a huge factor. Definitely. I'd love to. I can't wait to see what happens with them and how they how a tool like that gets used, and maybe can illustrate how some other communities can build tools like that and use them. You know what I'm saying?
As a repository for knowledge, for art, for
there we go,
to go to find that idea on Sunday or Saturday or Friday night or whenever they decide to go, that reiterates to their minds and their thought process that yes, I've made the right decision.
Right, because I'll tell you what a lot of people's thoughts on that kind of thing is that it's just another church, it's just another whatever, you know, it's just another building. And I think maybe making it clear to people what the hell that's all about would be really empowering to the effort, you know? You
know, church is a pagan word.
Yeah, kirk.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yep.
So there's, you know, there's some education. I mean, there really is a real strong, fierce streak of independence among individuals that decided to adopt this path, because really we're thumbing our fucking noses at all of society saying, no, screw y'all. I want to
fuck you guys.
It's like that Megadeth song, Peace Sells. If there's a new way, it better work this time.
Right.
I love that song. And I never thought in a million years that I would be living it. Here I am.
There's a few songs that I thought I'd never be living, but I am. I'm not going to go into that shit.
Right.
Right on, man. Well, before we wrap this up, man, tell me, let's talk a little bit about a couple other projects that you're involved in. What are the books? We talked a little bit about the Gothi program. That's cool. But let's talk about your books. You've got a Facebook thing going on that's kind of cool.
I've got a Facebook page called The Noble-Minded Heathen. And I want to give full credit to Melissa Mills for that, because she has really been a driving force behind that. She is a rock star with regards to she she wants this thing to be. So she cornered me, and she said, Bryan, let's go over these foundations of faith. So what I did is I read from the lore. I offer a fantastic, if I do say so myself, presentation on it.
No, I've seen it. I agree.
Thank you. And I talk about it, and I talk about these wonderful things that they bridge the gap of the esoteric and the real world and the mental and the emotional, and it really is Bragi weaving this tapestry of words where we might create an image in our minds that will guide us through life. So anyway, Foundations of Faith is the YouTube series. So I do the webinar and talk with the individuals and the people, and it's been real rewarding. And then I put the video up on YouTube, and I shared a couple places on social media, and then I'm trying to write a book of everything that I said, and my gosh, you wouldn't believe how many words are involved in an hour's worth of conversation.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So
that's
I'm like
crazy.
Yeah, I'm at like 200,000 words or something.
Oh my God.
Working on it. But it's going to be a big book. But I've contacted a woman named Melanie Robbins, who is an artist in this with this kind of idea that she's going to help craft a unique cover for this very special book.
Oh, cool.
And then the other one that I just got the inspiration for the other day is one on beauty. Is the one on, if you. Robert Jordan wrote his 12 rules for life, but he said there were originally 48, and there were some that he left out. And one of them was make one room of your house as beautiful as you can.
Yeah.
Everyone should brush against beauty. The greatest feats of mankind have all been because of a beautiful woman. The imagery of woman is always her sitting still, so we can be inspired by her beauty. The images of man from all Renaissance art and before and after have been men in action, men in sport, men in battle, to express masculinity. But when you brush up against beauty, as the Aesir represent, these fine, noble-born goddesses, and what they represent treasure and beauty and love and abundance and all these. When a man or a woman brushes up against beauty, something very special happens. The great landscape art of the 20th century and Bierstadt and Ansel Adams present things that inspire us, a little bit of a romanticized ideal of the world we live in when we're surrounded by chaos.
Yeah.
So I had this idea that our spirituality, much like what we've been talking about, there's all this chaos in the world. So this book on beauty is going to be, it's kind of got my imagination fired.
I can't wait to hear more about it. Let's take a break real quick, and we'll get back to the other book and some of the other material that you're up to these days. And man, and let me tell you, I'm just really enjoying the shit out of all this, dude. This is cool.
Okay, man. I do too, man.
Right, cool. Excellent. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're gonna close with finishing up talking about some of the projects and books and things that Bryan's got going on, and take an opportunity then to just also mention some folks that we think are important to this whole dynamic. So
yeah,
what's going on, man?
Yeah, the book on beauty, I'm still working on. That's very much in the planning phases, and some of it's going to stem from the book I wrote on hell, the sun-facing goddess. And then Life and the Love of Life, Leaf and Leafers, the two that emerged from Anchorstone, which that really book caught my eye. But Blind in One Eye is also, these last three books that I wrote really were when I began to express myself, and I think they've done very well. And I managed to get all three of them on Audible, along with 5 other titles. So I've got 5 titles on Audible as well, which is.
And I'm going to have the link on here somewhere, probably right up here, to all of this.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, the Audible has been a real successful venue. People will put that, and they'll listen to it on their way to work, or they'll listen to it at home, and they it surprised me how well that's gone. I think Tuesday I'm going to be on Steve McNallen's podcast with God's Folk, and I forgot the name of all of it, but it'll be Tuesday at 7. I'm sure I'll share it around, and
that's cool. Steve is one of the Steve McNallen, Stephen Flowers. Most people know him as Edward Thorson. These are guys that these are guys whose shoulders you and I stand on with the development of what's going on here, and these are the guys that really truly broke the inertia.
Yes,
in age.
Steve and Sheila, they've come out here to Oklahoma a couple times, and they've stayed at the farm with me, and they've visited a couple times, and they're delightful guests. And I'll tell you, he came to the farm when the family decided to sell the farm, and we closed out. We had a ceremony, and I said, Steve, come out, man. And him and Sheila came out to support me, because I was really having a hard time losing this family farm. I didn't want to lose it.
Right.
And we had a big ceremony. There was a place down there in the grove. We had trees down there that were so big, 3 people couldn't get their arms around. Big old pecan trees in this river bottom. Just gorgeous. It's 160 acres of some of them were old growth pecans.
Uh-huh.
But the guy that built the place that Grandpa bought it from, he dug a well and he lined it with sandstone. So it was this real deep well. It was always full of water, and there was a damn tree growing out the side of it. So I took another great big piece of sandstone and made an altar stone. And we had our ceremonies around this well. And Steve came, and we did the big ceremony. There was a lot of good people there. And the next day, Steve helped me roll that altar stone into that well.
Yeah.
And I took a bottle of mead from that, and we moved to Utah. I went up high on a mountain and raised offering to Odin. And it was a real special journey for me. But the day after that, we went back up and we was watching some TV. Something was on the History Channel, and they were talking about some nonsense. And Steve was watching this, and he was like, "That's a lie. I was there, and I remember all. That's a bunch of horse." And it was a trip, man. And then I realized I'm sitting in the house. This old boy decided to come visit me and hang out. He knows all this stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah,
I can relate to that. There was a lot of shit that happened in Iraq that didn't really happen, and I was there, and I know it. That's funny shit, though. That's amazing.
I got a cousin right now in Texas. He's dying slowly because they burned all the chemical weapons in a pit.
Yep.
And the smoke got in his lungs, and they're not going to say anything about, oh yeah, they were really there. But he was an E7. I tossed salad on his shoulder,
Right.
Yeah, he was just.
For those of you guys who don't know what that means, we're talking about this guy's been through a lot of shit. He's got a stack of
ribbons, medals,
medals and everything. Yeah.
At any rate, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I know what you mean. But yeah, but Steve's been, and in difficult times, I've been lucky enough to be able to reach out to him and talk to him. And Sheila's in the Githia program for the AFA now, and she's really coming along. I think she's finding her stride. Steve is such a powerful figure in the start of all this, and now Sheila is beginning to really spread her wings. I think we're going to see great things from her. I really do.
That's cool, man.
Because she's been a teacher all her life. She has this loving touch, this healing hands, lifelong. I think that's special. But anyway, I'm going to be privileged enough to be on their show, like I was privileged enough to be on this one. So I can't thank you enough for allowing me a chance to run my mouth. I mean,
it's a huge privilege for me, man. There was I remember Melissa said something really funny, and this will be, a lot of people will think this is funny. She said she had some concerns about, before you and I really met, and before she knew how we were going to act around each other. She was, because we're obviously coming from different perspectives here, man.
Right.
And she was a little concerned that maybe there was going to be a fist fight over some bullshit or whatever. Not really concerned, but she was a little nervous. And she said, I just wasn't sure how you two were going to carry on. And we got together, and even though we were coming from different sides of the same coin, we had so much in common, it was impossible for us to not.
Dude, when you walk all the ground we've walked, it's not an issue.
Not at all. Not at all. But I just thought it was so funny, and she'll remember. If she's watching this right now, she'll get a kick out of that, because she'll remember that conversation. It was funny. But yeah, man, it's a huge honor and a pleasure to have you on here, and I really appreciate you helping me with this show by being on here.
I hope you enjoy a ton of success with it. I really do.
Thank you, and I really appreciate it. And I will be in touch with you when I get a little bit closer to something that looks like publishing on the book I'm working on too.
I look forward to it, man.
And you were the first person I thought of, and when you extended your hand regarding that the last time we met face to face, I was like, yeah, I'd be an idiot to not take him up on this, you know?
I'll walk you through everything you need to do to get it published, man. It'll be no problem.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate it. And
yes, I do.
We'll make sure to get the links to what Bryan's got going on up somewhere through the video, or very least at the end of it, so you can reach out to him. And that's pretty much all I got. Walk with the ancestors, folks.